The bread of silence lingers in your mind like a song you once knew by heart, but now can only hum. Its imagined crust, the invisible weight of a wrapped loaf never meant to be eaten, these things follow you as you move away from the ritual stall back into the heart of the market. The day is warmer now. Light peeks between rooftops, soft as butter on a hot plate. The air smells of flour and steam, but not just any flour, festive flour. The kind that only appears when there's music in the square and a reason, no matter how small, to make something fried. You follow the smell, and soon you hear the sizzle. At the center of the old cobbled plaza, 4 vendors stand in a loose circle, each with a large, wide pan of oil balanced over a low fire. Around them, paper cones, battered baskets, tongs, bowls of batter, trays of fruit and root vegetables. Wooden spoons stained with herbs and heat. It's a fried food festival. You hadn't planned on it. Then again, in medieval towns, no one ever did. Frying was a gesture. Loud, impulsive, borderline rebellious. It defied restraint. During feast days, it was expected. During fast days, it was creatively excused. On regular days, it was a surprise party thrown by your stomach. You sidle up to the first pan. A woman with her sleeves rolled high drops slices of turnip into the oil. They twist and curl like falling leaves, then settle sputtering into golden crescents. She calls them poor man's gold. You buy a cone of 5. They're hot, crisp, salted, and impossibly good for something that was mere moments ago a root covered in dirt. She tells you her grandmother used to sell them near the abbey during Lent. Technically illegal, she says, but only if you got caught. The man beside her is frying small bundles of chopped greens tied with onion stalks. He dunks them quickly, turns them twice, and pulls them out still bright with life. They sizzle as he salts them from high above. Garden fritters, he says, made from weeds mostly. You eat one. It's crispy, chewy, bitter, and brilliant. This one, he says, handing you a smaller piece, is thistle. You hesitate. It's for courage, he adds. You chew. Some scholars argue that medieval street frying was considered dangerous not just for the fire, but for the way it turned humble food into something joyful. Turnip, carrot, even bean mash once fried, they became indulgent. Accessible luxury. A threat to the natural order where pleasure was supposed to cost money or guilt or both. And yet it persisted. Fried snacks appeared at village fairs in monastic kitchens after hours and in urban markets where vendors could duck into doorways if the wrong kind of priest passed by. You ask the third vendor what he's frying. He smiles, guess. He hands you something that looks like a folded piece of cloth. It crackles in your hand. You bite. It's soft inside, sweet, grainy. You taste almond, maybe raisin, and then surprisingly cheese. Breadcrumb pudding, he says. Sweetened with date syrup and dipped in goat cheese before frying. You stare at him. I never said it made sense, he shrugs. You eat 2 more. The fourth vendor, quieter than the rest, works with a long-handled iron press. He pours a thin batter into it, folds it shut, and dips the whole thing into a deep pot of oil. Steam erupts. When he pulls it out, he opens the press and reveals something like a wafer, but puffier, crisp at the edges, soft in the center. He dusts it with powdered rose petals and hands it to you. No name, he says, just something I dreamed once. You chew slowly. It's delicate, floral, ephemeral, like the ghost of a pancake that kissed a waffle goodnight. You sit on the stone edge of a dry fountain, balancing your cone of poor man's gold in one hand, the rose petal dream in the other. Around you, the market hums. Children run past with fingers stained in oil. A woman laughs so hard she drops her fritter. Someone begins to play a tune on a dulcimer strung from a wooden crate. Fried food, you realize, is the music of the street. It rises briefly, loudly, then disappears, leaving a smile, a smudge, maybe a burn, but never regret. You wander again. A stall near the edge sells Saint's Crumb's fried dough, rolled in stale bread seasoned with crushed mint and cumin. The vendor calls it a blessed mistake. Another stand offers sweet onion rings served with a spoonful of spiced vinegar jam. They're better than apologies, the woman says. Especially bad ones. You ask her if she invented them. My third husband did, she says, and I divorced him anyway. You laugh. She hands you two more. One curious footnote from culinary history, there's a 14th century record of a fried food trial. A man in Bruges was fined for selling false fritters, lumps of cloth soaked in flour batter and fried to resemble apple slices. The court confiscated his pan. He argued they weren't harmful, just humorous. He lost, but his recipe survived. In fact, some scholars believe that's how dough satire was born, a genre of food meant not to fool, but to mock, like turnip pies labeled swan. Lentil paste served in oyster shells, fried pastry shaped like noble shoes. You pass a cart selling noble toes, fried pastries dusted with black sugar and stuffed with mashed pear and brandy. Eat one, the vendor says, and you'll never envy a baron again. You do. You don't. As the day winds down, the frying slows. The oil cools, the songs fade, the fritters dwindle. But the joy lingers. Fried food doesn't last. That's the point. It demands to be eaten now. It teaches you that pleasure can be brief and still worth it. That crisp edges and warm centers are enough of a reason to be kind. That even a root of weed or a heel of bread can become something golden if given heat and time and salt. You finish the last of your turnip crisps and wipe your fingers on a linen scrap. One final fact before you go: in a monastery outside Florence, there was a ban on frying during the week of Lent. But the rule said nothing about boiling oil at high enthusiasm. The friars obeyed, and every year the smell of fried chickpeas filled the courtyard anyway. Blessed are those who bend the rules, especially when they serve them hot. You wake early the next morning, not that you slept deeply. Your dreams were full of sizzling oil bread rings and sugar hearts melting on velvet. The market is quiet now, just the occasional wooden wheel creaking over stone or a sleepy rooster deciding it's worth crowing even if nobody's impressed. But your feet already know where to go. This time you follow not your nose or your hunger, but something gentler, a rhythm, a slow tapping, a steady rustle. The sound of cloth folding, of prayer whispered, of flour sifted. You find the source down a narrow lane where the walls grow mossy and cool. A wooden door is half open, and just beyond it a courtyard. Square, walled, lined with low fruit trees and worn stone benches. And in the center, monks, not in solemn rows, not in procession, just working, quietly, together. You stand near the entrance. A monk with flower on his sleeve sees you, nods once, and gestures for you to come in. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't ask your purpose. He simply hands you a small square of linen and says, "You'll want this for your lap." You sit. They're making monastic snacks. Not elaborate meals, not soup for the poor, just snacks. Small things. Round loaves the size of a cupped hand. Slices of dried pear strung on twine like garlands. Thin squares of pressed fruit leather rolled and tied with mint. Bowls of almond meal, pots of honey. Dried breadcrumbs in careful mounds. The monk beside you is shaping small balls of dough, his fingertips barely touching the surface. "For the children," he says softly. "They don't always need sermons. The scent is clean and faintly sweet. No spices, no oils, just clarity. Here food is not for indulgence or even sustenance, it's for attention." You watch how they work slowly, deliberately in silence or low chant. Their movements are part of something else, not just baking, but listening. One monk uses the edge of a seashell to cut thin wafers. Another uses a carved wooden block to press a cross into a circle of dough. One stirs a pot of almond milk over low flame, watching it like it might confess something. You ask gently what they're making. "Fast day food," the monk with the dough says. "Food that reminds us we are more than appetite." You nod and wonder what that feels like. He places a rolled square of fruit leather into your hand. You chew. It's sharp, tart, almost aggressive, then soft, then gone. "Apricot and vinegar," he explains, "for remembering sorrow without bitterness." You smile. It's the kind of snack that makes you sit straighter. These are quiet snacks, not made for markets or festivals, not meant to be sold. They're snacks designed for ritual time, the time between moments. When you've already prayed or read or mourned or worked and there is still a long silence ahead. A moment where food isn't comfort, it's presence. One monk is working on what looks like little edible pebbles. He mixes crushed almonds, a touch of honey, and stale breadcrumbs until they form tiny, irregular shapes. He notices you watching and speaks softly for those who cannot speak. He tells you these were once given to guests during visits of mourning. Not to be eaten right away, but held. Something to grip, to carry, to chew slowly when the words came back. No one hurries here. Time feels shaped by patience. There's a kind of generosity in it. Not giving what you have, but sharing how you make it. One young monk carries a small tray of rose petal wafers. He sets them beside you and gestures. You pick one up. It smells like linen dust and floral rain. Be gentle, he whispers, it's for remembrance. And here's your historical fact: while monastic cuisine is often portrayed as bland or severe, many orders developed their own complex systems of snack making. Recipes passed between cloisters, almond milk variations, lentil crisps with dried herbs, even experimental fermentations. It wasn't about indulgence, it was about meditation through flavor. You learn that some monasteries recorded these recipes in secret cookbooks, often buried between pages of illuminated psalms or marginal saints. The next item you try is a mock cheese ball made entirely of crushed almonds and rosewater rolled in ground parsley. It's sweet, sour, green, and earthy. You grin. A monk beside you raises an eyebrow. Cheese without cows, he shrugs. You wonder aloud what made monks so inventive. He wipes his hands and thinks for a long moment. Because we had rules, he finally says, and rules are invitations. You nod. That sounds like something a baker would say. Or a poet. You're handed a soft steamed dumpling filled with mashed peas and coriander. It's damp, warm, smells like candle wax and memory. You eat it. It tastes like restraint. Like someone trying their hardest to follow a rule and still live fully. A few minutes later, a small bell chimes. The monks pause, not to pray, not for mass, just to sit, to chew. Together. No one speaks, but somehow everything is said. You realize this is not just snacking. This is communion through food, not in the sacramental sense, but in the daily, humble, embodied one. A moment where sharing a bite means sharing time, breath, intention. You are full, not with food, but with belonging. The monk who gave you the linen cloth returns. He hands you a pouch. Inside, one almond wafer, one twisted dumpling, one dried pear slice, and one crumb ball. For your walk, he says. You bow, not deeply, just enough. As you step out into the sunlight, the quiet of the courtyard stays with you. It hums behind your ears like chant. You bite the pear slice. It's chewy, sweet, and slightly sharp, like the memory of a good silence. And here's a final curious detail: in some monastic orders, breaking the fast at dusk was marked not with bells or hymns, but with a shared snack, a quiet sitting, a letting go, a ritual not of grand gestures, but of gentle chewing. You think perhaps the world could use more snacks like that, more pauses, more edible silences, more moments where a mouthful says what the heart hasn't yet formed. You walk on the pouch warm in your hand, and somewhere behind you another batch of fruit leather is being pressed, cooled, and folded, waiting patiently for someone who needs it. The pouch in your hand grows lighter as you walk, one pear slice gone, then a quiet almond wafer folded like a breath. It's strange how such small bites leave you so full. Not with food, but with stillness. A kind of peace that doesn't come from being finished, but from being present. And just like that, you feel hunger again, but not the kind that grumbles and demands. This is curiosity's appetite. A question your stomach asks gently. What did people eat when they weren't supposed to eat anything at all? The answer waits just beyond a narrow stone bridge lined with moss and ivy. You follow a trail of steam, faint like breath on glass, and a melody of muted sounds, a wooden spoon against a clay pot. A soft sigh, the creak of a bench where no one sits. You've entered a fast-day kitchen. And yes, they're cooking. This you'll learn quickly is one of the Middle Ages' most creative paradoxes: how to eat when eating isn't allowed. Or more accurately, how to obey the letter of the rule while feeding the soul anyway. A short monk in a blue apron sees you, smiles and beckons. He gestures toward a table. Laid out before you is a lineup of forbidden fakes, humble ingredients dressed up like their decadent cousins. The first almond cheese. You take a slice. It trembles, pale and creamy, speckled with crushed herbs and the faint glisten of olive oil. You bite. It melts. But there's no cow in sight. It's made from almond milk and wine sediment, the monk says, with lemon rind for bite. You raise an eyebrow. Better than some real cheese, he adds. You don't argue. Next, mock eggs. 2 halves of a small shell cradle something yellow and jiggly. The yolk, he says, is saffron-dyed almond paste. The white is whipped wine jelly. You chuckle, a snack that lies. No, he replies, a snack that tries. You eat it. It tastes like ambition and a bit like breakfast from another world. You ask him why so much effort for a fast day. He waves his spoon like a philosopher. Because the body obeys, but the heart still longs. You nod. And that you realize is the soul of medieval fast day cuisine. It wasn't about denying pleasure, but transforming it. You couldn't eat meat, then make fish look like sausage. No dairy, whip almond milk until it sings. No indulgence, define indulgence creatively. A young novice brings over a platter of fish milk. Yes, you heard that right. It's pale, slightly thick, served in a carved wooden cup. You sip. It's earthy, nutty, slightly fermented, made from boiled nuts, soaked oats, and the water used to poach herbs, all blended and strained through linen. Good for digestion, she says, and bad for conversation. You laugh. The monk beside her offers you apple herring. You hesitate. He winks. No fish involved. It's slices of stewed apple brined in vinegar and mustard seed, then chilled and garnished with parsley and oil. You chew. It's tart, slick, salty, and bizarrely delicious. Food for pretending, he says, but pretending with love. Somewhere in the corner, a nun is steaming small parcels wrapped in cabbage leaves. She opens one and hands it to you. Inside, lentils mashed with walnuts, seasoned with nutmeg and onion. Meatless joy, she says, her eyes twinkling. It really is. Here's a historical fact to chew with your cabbage. Some monasteries created entire fast day feasts using only plant-based ingredients, yet shaping them to resemble meat, fish, or cheese. It was both an act of devotion and an art form, culinary theater in the quietest of kitchens. The more devout the rules, the more imaginative the menu. A common dish, pastry fish made with crushed almonds, dates, and honey, sculpted into the shape of a trout scales, carved with a knife-tip eyes made of peppercorns. Served cold reverently on a wooden plank, not eaten with laughter but with respect. You walk deeper into the kitchen. The air here is thicker steam spice and sincerity all swirling together. At one station, a woman carefully drizzles carrot syrup over baked millet rounds. Dessert, you ask. Memory, she answers. She explains that during long fasts, sweetness wasn't always forbidden, but it had to be humble. No eggs, no butter, no cream, only fruit, nuts, grain, and time. Time in this kitchen is the main ingredient. Everything is slow. The dumplings are steamed, not fried. The lentils are soaked overnight. The fruit pastes are stirred with both hands. You watch as a novice stirs fig puree for nearly 20 minutes without speaking. Why no shortcuts, you ask? The monk beside you smiles. Because the recipe is not the food. You nod. That one might stay with you. You taste a mock sausage, a blend of mashed peas, breadcrumbs, ground sage, and a touch of vinegar shaped into a tube and gently seared on a griddle. You chew. It tastes like effort. And somehow that's deeply satisfying. The idea that someone would go through all this work not to deceive, but to nourish in a way that matched the day's spiritual shape, it humbles you. One final dish, sugarless pudding. A bowl of mashed parsnips spiced with clove and orange zest. You taste it. It's odd. Sweet but not indulgent. Rooty but not heavy. It's a reminder, a nun says. You tilt your head. That joy can grow in plain places, she explains. Even in a root cellar. That's your quirky detail for the day. Medieval fasting wasn't about going hungry. It was about finding joy in constraints, turning limits into recipes, practicing hope with a spoon. You sit for a while on a low bench, your lap warm with a folded cloth and your heart full of strange, gentle flavors. Then you notice something at the back of the kitchen, a small wooden box carved with flowers. Inside a stack of handwritten slips, recipes or something more. You read one aloud for the day when joy feels hard stew, dried plums with vinegar and eat slowly. Another for nights too loud with silence, press almond milk into cloth, whisper psalms and sip warm. You look around, no one watches, but you feel known. You copy one down. For the ache that prayer won't reach, make bread from ground peas and thyme. Bake with a cracked stone. Serve it to no one. Then eat it slowly with your own hands. A recipe not for a dish, but for healing. That's the real heart of fast day snacks. They weren't shortcuts. They were rituals of mercy. Tiny edible prayers. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. You walk out of the kitchen with a pouch of your own. Inside one almond egg, a folded leaf dumpling, and a thin parsnip wafer. You carry them like talismans. The air outside smells of spring rain even if no clouds appear. And somewhere inside you a hunger softens not from being fed but from being seen. You've eaten your way through breadless cheese, meatless meat, and eggs that never saw a chicken. And somehow you're still curious, still hungry. Not for more food, but for the why behind it all. Why go through so much effort to fake what you already know you can't have? The answer begins to unfold as you follow a pair of children down a winding path paved with broken tiles and scattered fig leaves. They skip past you laughing, each holding a small baked twist of dough wrapped in leaves. A snack. Certainly. But it looks covert, as if meant to be eaten in hiding. You follow them. The alley narrows and leads to a quiet courtyard. At its center is a modest stone chapel, faded with time, flanked by olive trees. But more interesting than the chapel is the low wooden bench that circles its base, and the people sitting there, old women, a few boys, a dusty priest with a blackened thumb, all chewing something. You sit. A woman next to you offers a wrapped parcel. You open it. It's a coated cake. Literally, it looks like bread, but inside letters, pressed into the dough, hidden among raisins and almonds, the imprint of a wooden stamp, a word, a symbol, a message. Your slice says, "Remember the orchard." You look up. The woman shrugs. It's not about fruit. And just like that, you're in the world of hidden medieval snacks, foods used not just for nourishment or even ritual, but for resistance. You chew slowly and she explains. Back when sermons were in Latin and laws were etched on walls, no one could read. Food became the language of the poor. A pastry wasn't just sweet, it was a symbol. A snack could carry a joke, a blessing, a warning. One woman passes you a hard biscuit, etched with a circle and a dot. Sunbread, she whispers, from when the calendar was banned. You hold it like a relic. Another person hands you a honeyed nut bar, brittle and dark. It's wrapped in a cloth printed with 3 stars and a cross. It's for journeys, they say, made only on the night before fleeing. You don't ask where to. Not every snack needs a footnote. But here's a historical one. In parts of medieval Europe, especially during times of religious conflict, snacks were used as safe passage tokens. A folded pastry might indicate allegiance. A stamped cake might mark a safe house. A specific shape of bread roll baked only during harvest could signal a secret meeting under the guise of celebration. And often these codes passed only by mouth. Recipes weren't written. Symbols weren't explained. You had to belong to understand. You ask if that tradition is still alive. The woman beside you smiles. You're holding it. The cake in your hand now feels heavier. Not with ingredients, but with memory. You try another piece passed down from a boy no older than 10. It's dry, almost tasteless. Why make something so plain, you ask? It's for remembering silence, the boy says, matter of fact. Turns out even absence can be a recipe. A soft jingle interrupts your thought. A man with a small wooden cart appears at the edge of the courtyard. On the side, a symbol, two wheat stalks crossed. He sells pilgrims' pastilles, tiny, chewy herb-packed lozenges wrapped in scraps of song lyrics. You unwrap one. It says, "Walk quiet, dream loud." You chew. It tastes like time and shadow. He tells you these were carried by travelers during fasts not just to soothe the throat, but to remind them of where they came from. Some were even sung before eaten, he says. A bite, a verse, a vow. You nod, you begin to understand. This isn't just food as resistance. It's food as message, as memory, as whisper. A girl offers you a dark brown dumpling with a strange shape, 3 folds, 1 knot. It's called Ava's purse, she says. It means temptation carried gently. You eat it. It's filled with dried fig and pepper, sweet then spicy, a shock in your mouth. She grins. Some monks say it's a sin to enjoy it. Do you think so, you ask? She shrugs. It's a snack, not a sermon. Fair. You sit longer than you meant to. The sun rises higher, glinting off the chapel walls. A dog naps in a patch of shade. Someone begins to hum a tune you don't recognize, but your body sways with it anyway. Then someone hands you what looks like a pebble wrapped in linen. It's small, grayish, smells faintly of smoke. You raise an eyebrow. War bread, they say, and here comes your quirky detail. In besieged cities, bakers created stone loaves, dense, sour breads designed to last for weeks and be eaten sparingly. Some were deliberately made ugly to discourage overeating. Some included bits of burned grain or ash, symbolizing loss. Others contained hidden messages baked into the crust, a line of prayer, a crosshatch map, a single pressed coin. You bite gently. It's hard, very hard. You chew anyway. It tastes like dust, smoke, and hope. You imagine someone eating this on a rooftop hiding from soldiers, or in a cellar by candlelight whispering promises to the walls. You swallow. It sits heavy but not unwelcome. Around you, the courtyard is now a marketplace of meaning vendors offering loaves shaped like suns and moons. Children handing out fig rolls wrapped in riddles. One man offers you a flatbread with holes poked in the shape of a ladder. For climbing back, he says. From what? He doesn't say. Maybe that's the point. These snacks aren't always meant to be understood. They're meant to be carried, to be held until their meaning arrives. One last recipe for the road, a cake shaped like a bird's wing folded around a prune, called Mercy Flight. They say it was baked for widows during times of exile, given with no words, just eye contact and a nod. You bite, the wing breaks. The prune is soft, and for a second you feel like you're flying, but only inside. You stand pouch heavier now with the weight of edible messages, and you walk again, into the afternoon, into the world that still needs snacks like these, snacks that carry warnings, and blessings, and songs, and love. Your pockets are now museums, your pouch a traveling library of edible whispers. The Mercy Flight cake crumbles softly inside the prune, half intact like a secret that didn't want to be told all at once. And yet you keep going, past shuttered stalls, past the linen cart where a woman once sold almond cheese wrapped in gossip, past a boy drawing fish on a wall not to defy but to remember. The path takes you where it always does when the sun begins to soften toward the old gate. The city's skin its final breath before wilderness. But you stop short not by accident but by smell. It is glorious, oily, wild, fright. The kind of smell that breaks rules and fixes hearts at the same time. You follow it, and what you find tucked between 2 crumbling towers is a portable snack miracle, a woman with flour on her nose, a skillet the size of a shield, and 3 baskets of mystery. She doesn't look up as you approach. Hungry or curious, she asks. You blink. Yes. Good, she replies. This one's for both. She hands you a folded cake, warm and golden, dripping with something sweet. You bite. It's a fritter. But not just any fritter. It's stuffed with herbs, charred maybe, a touch of onion, and just enough dried apricot to make your tongue double take. Folded snacks, she says, are the saints of the street. You chew reverently. She's right. There's something sacred in this chaos. The crisp, the oil, the heat. It's not refined. It's not pretending. It is what it is, and it is wonderful. She points to another tray. Pilgrim's pockets, she says. Lentils, garlic, mint. You eat one and you remember who you used to be. You bite. She's not wrong. Here's your historical truth-folded snacks were the medieval version of fast food. Portable, durable, edible, even when cold. From meat-filled hand pies to chickpea paste and fried dough, these humble packets fed travelers, workers, and anyone who didn't have time to sit, or couldn't afford to. You take another, a folded rye pancake stuffed with mushrooms, crushed nuts, and vinegar-soaked raisins. You ask what it's called. She grins, widow's wallet. Why? 'Cause it's full of everything she's not supposed to have. You raise it in salute, then eat the whole thing in 3 contented bites. Another truth, these folded snacks weren't just practical. They were poetic. Folded once for mourning, twice for celebration, 3 times for secrets. Some recipes were whispered from mother to daughter, each fold a story. You ask if she knows more. She shrugs, then hands you a final folded treat. It's triangular, dark brown, smells of cinnamon, clove, and burnt sugar. This one's old, she says, pre-plague, called a fox's letter. You raise an eyebrow. Eat it, she says, but read it first. You look closely. Tiny marks in the dough, pricks with a needle. You trace them. It's not letters, it's a map. A hidden route to where who knows. You bite. The flavor is strange, dense, sticky, fragrant with something almost floral. You ask what's in it. She smiles, guess. You fail. She won't say, not because it's a secret, but because mystery is the point. And here's your quirky detail in many towns. Street vendors used folded snacks not just to feed the body, but to pass messages. A pie folded left to right meant safe travel. Folded top down meant mourning. A 3-fold pastry might carry a love note or a coded insult. Food was never just food. It was gesture, memory, defiance, hope folded in layers. You sit beside her cart. She's frying another batch, humming a tune you don't recognize. A boy runs by, steals a fritter, and she doesn't even glance up. He needs it more, she says, and you think so do you. You take another pocket. This one is smaller, still warm. You bite and it burns your tongue. You laugh. She nods. That one's called regret. You ask why she keeps doing this, cooking, selling, folding, feeding strangers. She wipes her hands on her apron, then looks you straight in the eye. Because someone did it for me. You nod. You understand. You leave with 3 folded treats in your pouch. One called Mercy Knot filled with apple and sage. One called Echo Cradle shaped like a sleeping baby. And one wrapped in cloth labeled just in case. You don't eat any of them. Not yet. Some snacks aren't meant to be consumed right away. Some are just reminders that the world can fold beauty into even the smallest thing. Even dough, even sorrow, even time. As you walk back through the gate, the wind tugs at your cloak. You feel the snacks nestled against your chest. And you know you're carrying more than food. You're carrying stories. And one day you might pass them on. Folded, still warm. Another, if you feel alone, that means you're getting close. It's an archive for patience. Because even if you're not on a holy path with a staff and sandals, you've got something just as good. You ask if he's ever been on pilgrimage himself. Before you leave, he places a small bundle in your hand wrapped in oiled cloth tied with thread. It's still warm. Here's your quirky detail. Some pilgrim cookies weren't just snacks, they were edible journals. Bakers would press symbols into them. Stars, scallop shells, arrows, even tiny church spires. These weren't just for flavor, they were signs helping the weary know they were on the right path or reminding them that they weren't walking it alone. You nod. I'll call it coming home. The man explains that's for protection. You eat it when you cross a river. Each cookie batch has a note tucked beside it. It's surprisingly tough, dry, chewy, meant to last. The sweetness is muted, hidden behind layers of barley and something vaguely medicinal. Not delicious, but oddly comforting. Like an old friend who's not great at jokes but always shows up. He smiles, you name it. Cookies. Some are prayers, some are directions. One simply says, don't turn around, keep walking. Don't give up now, seriously. He doesn't. He begins to stack small boxes, careful cloth-wrapped bundles of cookies, each labeled with soft ink. Hope for the ankles. Of course. You grin. What's in it? Soul of St. James. Pilgrim's cookies, he says. And somewhere behind you, the candle flickers its last breath and the pan cools. You pick one up. It smells like oat honey and something faintly herbal. You nod, even though you're nowhere near water. He hands you one shaped like a snail. He sees you. He nods. He gestures to a platter. Single-step recipe, he explains. Because the second foot might not make it. All the same size, all the same shape footprints. Mostly cinnamon and a little wine. You bite one. There's hundreds of them. These were real, he adds. They were tucked into boots, carried across mountains. Some say they kept people alive more than prayers did. Tiny ones, left foot only, no right. You keep walking. At this point, you're not even sure where you are. The city is curled in on itself, folding and refolding like the pastries in your pouch. But there's no fear. You're carried by smell, by memory, by crumbs left behind like breadcrumbs from some forgotten tale. You tuck it into your pouch. You raise an eyebrow. Then he says, because some prayers don't need words. The moon is higher now and the streets are quieter but not silent. The kind of quiet that has texture like warm wool or pages turning in another room. It's the sound of bread cooling, of oil solidifying in pans, of stories exhaling. You laugh. You laugh. Whose tear? It lingers. He smiles. Oh, so is your heart. But the sweetness. You hum. You rise. You walk. You come upon a well-lit stall long after most vendors have packed up. It's not much, just a wooden counter, a linen canopy, and a string of lanterns swaying like sleepy fireflies. The man behind the counter wears a feathered hat which tells you absolutely nothing about what he's selling, except that it's probably whimsical. It joins the folded pies, the comfort bread, the message cake, the secret fritter, the map-shaped dumpling, the regret sugar. You thank him, but he's already gone, vanished into the leaves like a fable. He wouldn't give you one anyway. You sit together under the fig tree for what feels like an hour, maybe more. He hums something wordless, a kind of lullaby shaped more by breath than melody. He doesn't answer for a long time. Instead, he hands you a tiny packet wrapped in waxed linen and tied with a fraying string. As the monk refills his pan, you ask why he keeps making these if they're not officially allowed. You don't ask for a recipe. You eat it slowly. Your pouch is getting full. For later, he says, fair. It melts into nothing, leaving only a warmth behind your teeth and the sense that something quiet has happened. Whoever's closest to the pot, he replies, Ash Wednesday drops. You wonder what your own regrets would taste like. This one's special, he says, called the Forgotten Amen. Only made during eclipses, we use powdered almond honey and exactly one tear. You nod. Too late. You believe him. And here comes your quirky detail. Some monastic sweet makers would encode their personal emotions into the flavors. Anger became mustard, joy became honey morning, translated as fennel or licorice. The result, a kind of edible diary readable only by taste. He passes you a final sweet small golden shaped like a shell. Mostly memory, he replies. Mercy crystals, probably something chewy, a bit bitter. Maybe with a hint of vanilla if you're lucky. He shrugs, not illegal, just frowned upon, like laughing during matins. So, illegal. But his face, you ask what's in it. He doesn't speak, he just pats the stone beside him. It tastes like burnt orange and something smoky, not unpleasant, just pensive. You're handed something labeled regret sugar. He leans down and opens a small wooden box at his feet. Inside are more contraband confections, neatly wrapped in scraps of linen, each labeled in a child's careful script. Here's your historical fact. Although monasteries in the Middle Ages followed strict dietary rules, especially during fasts, many monks still developed elaborate recipes for sweet snacks. Honeyed nuts, sugar-coated seeds, candied orange peel, almond brittle, even syrups and wafers. Some were made as medicine, others, well, for the soul. Fair enough. Sleep crunch. He grins. That's St. Clement's catch. We're not supposed to name our food. You try a different almond clump. This one's shaped like a little fish. He nudges the pan toward you. Inside, caramelized almonds crackled with spice and stuck together in curious shapes. He chuckles. These are monastic sweets, he explains. Only made when no one's looking. You blink. You sit. You swallow, they should be. Or at least a man who smells like one. He watches you chew and finally says they're not for everyone. It's warm, sticky, almost too hard to bite until it isn't. The crunch is perfect. The sweetness just enough. The spice, oddly familiar. You pick one up, you end up in a monastery garden. The moon has started to rise silver and soft, and it follows you like a watchful eye through crooked alleys and past shuttered shops. But your feet know where they're going, even if your thoughts don't. Utter peace. You pass under a half-collapsed archway where vines have taken over, growing thick through the bricks like they're trying to hold the building together with patience and leaves. He's roasting something in a tiny pan held over a candle flame. The pan is blackened. The candle sputters. His robes are patched in 17 places minimum. There's no one visible, but the smell is unmistakable. Roasted almonds, burnt sugar, orange peel, spice. You follow the scent like a thread, stepping carefully between stones carved with prayers and names half worn away. And there in the middle of it all, on a stone bench under a fig tree, is a monk. You walk quietly now. The bread roll tucked under your arm is still warm, as if it's breathing, as if by some small miracle it has decided to keep you company for a while. This one isn't for hunger. You tuck it into your pouch alongside folded pies and coated cakes beside mystery fritters and mercy dumplings. Well, what's left of one? It echoes once, then fades into the bread-scented dark. You step outside and the bell behind you rings softly. It's for holding. This one's different. It's not that kind of roll, because hunger's not polite. You don't eat it right away. The woman next to you shrugs. Someone places a roll in your hand, still warm. For your way home, they say. You ask why. No one counts. You stay until your knees ache from standing and your hands are dusted white like early snow. Slip it into your pocket. Meant to be shared with no one, then shared anyway. You help carry baskets of bread to a nearby window. A soft knock from the outside and a hand reaches in no face. Just hands taking what they need. No one asks for names. You copy one down. Eat while watching the rain. Here's your quirky detail. Some medieval snack kitchens included written notes with their food. Not recipes, but emotional messages. Things like, for the day your hands shake, this bread will not crumble. You help wrap parcels, 2 rolls per person, always wrapped in cloth. Never string. The cloth, you're told, will later become a handkerchief, a bandage, a patch. Nothing here is wasted, not even sadness. You raise an eyebrow. The flavor is almost a whisper. He chuckles. Chickpeas, rose water, and almond flour. And that's enough. You're offered a baked fig split and filled with crushed walnuts and a single drop of honey. You eat it with your fingers. Everything is soft, folded warm. As if the food knows its job isn't to impress, but to sit quietly beside someone who's hurting. Is that custard, you ask? This kitchen, you realize, isn't about indulgence. It's about care. Made for those with no teeth, he adds. Another gentle bite. It's warm, it's comforting. The man to your left pipes something onto flatbread. The paste is yellow, thick, and sweet. You're handed a small pie. You take a bite and think this is the kind of snack you feed to sadness. Not to fix it, but to hold its hand. It's filled with mashed lentils, cabbage, and what you think might be dried pear. Here's your historical fact. In many medieval towns, communal baking days were hosted by religious guilds or charitable groups who prepared food not for sale but for sharing with widows, the sick, orphans, or pilgrims too poor to buy a crust. The recipes were plain. The labor shared the gesture, the main ingredient. It's gentle. You grin. You like answers that wiggle. And then you're shaping comfort rolls, small soft circles brushed with milk and pressed with 3 fingers. That's the trinity, a boy explains, then adds, or maybe just the baker's mark. Depends who you ask. She replies simply, because it remembers better that way. It's a confraternity bakery, a quiet, communal place where guilds, neighbors, and even strangers gathered in the late Middle Ages to bake for others. You ask why they bake it by hand. No garlic, no salt, just wheat water and a touch of caraway for those who can't taste anymore. The woman next to you says this is bread for the sick. Not a church bell, not quite. It's smaller, faintly cracked. Hanging outside a low wooden door painted a color that can only be described as once blue. The warmth immediate. It feels right. You begin to knead. A man gestures to a wooden table covered in dough. Nearby, women shape rolls while singing something that sounds like a lullaby in Latin. You don't understand the words, but you understand the rhythm. The flour is soft. You're handed an apron by someone who doesn't ask your name. This is not a market, not a kitchen, not even a tavern, and not for profit. Inside, stone floors, flickering lamps, and rows of tables covered in flour. Tonight it leads you to a bell. You're not surprised. You're too full of pastries and questions to be startled anymore. The path after folded snacks is never straight. It winds like a bread twist, gentle and slightly uneven, lined with the crumbs of things you didn't know you were still hungry for. The door opens anyway. You knock, but no one answers. Not grand, not loud. And another in one town, they carved love notes into the shells. You walk away clutching your cone like it's a letter. The night carries you forward, but the taste, sweet, warm, grounded, lingers. You unwrap the linen, take another almond, close your eyes. Just quietly roasted. You nod. You smile. He sees you, gestures casually. You laugh. You find a low wall and sit. Chestnuts, he offers. He grins. Then pause. He hands you a cone of spiced nuts wrapped in waxed linen. For your walk, he says. And maybe for someone you haven't met yet. And a little bit sticky. He throws a chestnut at the fire. You raise an eyebrow. Not a grand one, just a circle of stone ringed by a few old stools and an iron pan balanced precariously on a tripod. A young man, barely more than a boy, sits cross-legged beside it, fanning the coals with a wooden fan shaped like a fish. He looks at the fire. Do you eat them alone, you ask? Just for a while. You thank him, stand and turn to leave, and think this is what generosity tastes like. Fair, he shrugs. My uncle used to say that, usually while sneaking extra almonds into his robe. He tosses a few into a paper cone edges scorched by the fire and hands it over. Most of the time, but I never feel lonely. Then nods once. Here's your quirky detail. In some medieval love rituals, roasted chestnuts were cracked open by couples under moonlight. If both nuts popped at the same time, it meant their hearts were in harmony. If one stayed silent, well, they probably just needed more seasoning. And you believe her. Another story, one monk thought almonds were evil because they made people happy too quickly. One almond stall, he says, was shaped like a cathedral. You had to say a prayer before buying. Every snack is true somewhere. You bite one open, it cracks with a small puff of steam and the faintest hint of burnt sugar. The inside is soft, starchy, vaguely sweet. You hum without meaning to. He starts to tell you stories, not his, not really. Just things passed down like legendary almonds from fairs long gone. Warmth spills up your fingers. You ask if any of them are true. You glance at a small wooden bowl beside the fire. It's filled with sugar-glazed almonds, golden and glinting like little treasures. You take one. It crunches, then melts. Comfort sneaks into your chest. At the end, a fire pit. He watches you eat and says you'd be surprised how much truth fits in a nut. The moon has begun its slow descent. But your journey continues gentler now, like the last few notes of a song that doesn't quite want to end. You walk past shuttered doors and cobbled steps that dip like old memories. You're not hungry, not exactly. But your body still leans forward, nose tilted toward possibility. She offers you a dried fig stuffed with lavender and old breadcrumbs soaked in vinegar. It's called the end of autumn. Here's your historical fact. In medieval Europe, especially in the Alpine regions and parts of France, Italy, and the Balkans, roasted chestnuts were a staple winter snack sold by street vendors and even shared at communal gatherings. cheap filling and portable, they were often eaten with honeyed almonds or spiced wine. Some monasteries even served them during fasts. You ask how long she's been making these, and cookies shaped like hope. Your bag now rattles, squishes, crackles, and sings. It's like carrying an entire kitchen's memory. You ask how long it lasts. You nod again, mouthful, down a side street, past a crooked tavern whose sign creaks like a sigh. Then through a narrow alley where the walls are close enough to brush your shoulders. Best snack in winter, he says. So you do. Before you leave, she slips a thin piece of dried melon between your fingers. Here's your historical fact. In many parts of medieval Europe and Central Asia, fruits were carefully sliced, mashed, or boiled with herbs, then dried on cloth rooftops or wooden trays to preserve them. These became the early versions of fruit leather, thin, chewy, flavorful strips that could last for months. Some were spiced, some were folded, some were painted with honey to soften sorrow. You follow the scent. Tonight it smells like roasted chestnuts. Above you the moon is glowing like a peeled lychee. You've got the right mouth, she says. You hold it between your palms. It tastes like nostalgia and frost. He nods again, this time slower. For keeping promises, she says. You nod, tuck it into your pouch. No name, she whispers. It's just for the road. You thank her, mouth sticky with sweetness, and step back into the soft medieval dark. Then she smiles, and in your pouch 1,000 quiet voices hum sweet, dried, preserved, and waiting to be remembered. She answers without blinking, since time started forgetting what fresh tastes like. You blink. You lean back. She hands you a final item, a twist of dried apricot leather folded like a knot. It's important. A quiet rattling, like dry beans in a wooden bowl, or dice shaken by someone too reverent to gamble. You turn a corner and find a stall made entirely of baskets. You smile. Who buys these? Apple Skin Song. You follow the sound. Here's your quirky detail. Some medieval preservation snacks weren't sold. They were gifts made during harvest festivals or family ceremonies, wrapped in reused linen and kept in personal boxes for weeks or even years. Some nobles were said to carry dried pear slices from their childhood orchard as emotional keepsakes, not snacks. No one, she says, they're forgiving. You don't ask what that means. You just accept the next piece, sun-dried pear leather shaped like a spiral. Chewy, perfumed, full of sun. It clings to your teeth like a secret. Each one is labeled in neat script plum rain discs. She shrugs, long enough to be missed. You eat it even though it tastes like someone writing a farewell letter with their teeth. It's not delicious. She gestures for you to sit. She points to a basket shaped like a fish. Inside, thin discs of sunbread made from oats, dried apples, and elderflower. She shows you her personal stash, cheese brittle made by accident, pickled walnut bark, and something she calls storm chips. Shaved turnip boiled in wine, then left in the sun until it forgets it was once a root. No label, you ask. For hard winters, she says, or hard memories. She nods, satisfied. You take one. She doesn't look up as you approach. She's stirring something with immense focus, a porridge so thick it seems to breathe. Helleniskin. Peasant's ribbon. You look closer. Sunbread half. You feel better for having met them. You try to speak, but she shushes you gently like a librarian, or a baker who doesn't want to startle the food. You leave the stall behind. But the cookies stay with you, crumbling slightly at the edges like old maps or old memories. Crumbs. She places a sliver of something amber in your palm. Dried quince brushed with vinegar and honey. You taste it. It's sharp, then soft, then gone. The rattling continues. You try another. Then you see them rows of preserved snacks laid out in crinkled linen. Some hard, some wrinkled, some folded into strange flower shapes. This one is shaped like a hand. You add it to your pouch, which now rattles slightly when you walk. It's no longer just a food bag. He hands you a final cookie, this one shaped like an open door. Eat it when you're tired, he says, or lost. Tall ones, flat ones, narrow ones strung like lanterns from poles. And in the center, a woman with silver hair and a walnut spoon. You've stopped checking where you're going. The streets unfold gently now, as if the city itself is aware you're full of stories of sweets, of soft, edible memories. Even your shadow walks lighter. Perhaps it too has eaten something sacred. This time you don't follow your nose. You ask how he names them. Here's your historical fact. Pilgrimage routes across medieval Europe were dotted with vendors who sold durable portable cookies, often oat or rye-based, made with honey or dried fruit and designed to last for weeks. These cookies often had spiritual names like Saint's Crumb, Mercy Soul, or Way Bread. And in a strange way, you feel closer to yourself than you did before. He pauses, then shakes his head. No need, he says. Every night here I see more feet than a cathedral floor. People tell me what they need, he replies. I write it down. By now the city feels like it's holding its breath. The fires have mostly gone out. The bells are asleep. Even the stars are blinking slower, as if they too are caught in that tender pause between yesterday and what might be breakfast. But your feet keep going, not out of hunger anymore, but habit. Curiosity. Or maybe the soft compulsion of one last story before sleep. This time you find yourself in front of a gate, not a grand one, but old wrought iron painted with rust and careful ivy. Behind it, a tiny church courtyard, overgrown, lit only by the faint glow of coals and candle stubs. At its center sits a woman with a copper pot and a pair of wooden tongs. Around her, wafer irons. You've seen wafers before, pressed in church services, stacked in market stalls, crumbled into noble desserts. But these are different. Each is shaped like a tiny shield or a leaf or a bird in flight. She gestures for you to sit. No words. Just warmth. She places a wafer in your hand. It's thin, almost translucent, and smells of honey smoke and lemon thyme. You bite into it. It cracks lightly, then disappears. You exhale. She nods, understanding without explanation. Here's your historical fact. In the Middle Ages, wafers, also called wafres, were both sacred and social. Used in religious rituals, but also sold as street snacks. They were made using engraved irons and flavored with everything from rosewater to herbs. Monks, bakers, and noble households all had their own secret wafer recipes. Some were sweet, some were savory. All were delicate, fleeting, and deeply symbolic. She lifts one wafer iron, presses a dollop of batter, closes it. A hiss. Scent almond citrus butter. She opens it again. This one bears a vine curling around a pair of initials. You ask what they stand for. She says softly, no one remembers, but the pattern still knows. You nod. She continues pressing wafers, and each one tells a different tale. A scallop shell for pilgrims. A crescent moon for lovers parted by time. A single eye for watching the world kindly. Each one, she explains, was once a gift. Not sold, not traded. Just given after a wedding, during a fast, before a journey. You munch on a wafer shaped like a key. Hope, she says, or maybe mischief. You smile. Here's your quirky detail. Some wafers were part of coded recipes passed from baker to baker, using only symbols on the irons. A rose might mean saffron. A bird could mean egg yolk. No one wrote down the real ingredients. It was oral memory melted into flour and fire. You ask where her irons came from. She says they were my grandmother's and her grandmother's and so on. I'm just the latest tongue they speak through. You don't speak for a while after that. The night makes room for silence. She hands you a small stack of wafers wrapped in an embroidered cloth. You peek at the top one. It bears a spiral, delicate and careful. What's this one mean, you ask? She shrugs gently. Sleep, maybe. Fitting. You wrap it carefully and tuck it into your pouch. As you stand to leave, she gives you one last wafer, this one warm, fresh from the iron. It has no symbol, just blank. Some stories haven't happened yet, she says. This one's yours. You step back into the sleeping streets, the wafer still warm in your hand. You don't eat it yet. You don't want to. Not yet. Instead, you walk slowly, letting the quiet settle around you like soft bread dough rising. You think about symbols, recipes, memory, and you wonder what shape your own story might leave in someone else's hands. You walk now as if the night itself is holding your elbow. The city has softened into silence, not an emptiness, but a fullness that no longer needs to speak. Every stone you pass feels worn with story, every shutter closed with a final good night. Even the cats have tucked themselves into corners, dreaming of fish and spilled cream. But there's one more turn in the path, one more flicker of firelight. You find yourself outside a small wooden booth so narrow it might be mistaken for a wardrobe. From it wafts the unmistakable scent of honey and spice tinged with smoke. Inside, a man with ink-stained hands leans over a tray, carefully arranging something that looks like coins. No tiny cakes, round embossed golden at the edges. He looks up and says simply, "Pilgrim marks." You blink, cakes. He nods, cakes with messages, codes actually. You'll need good teeth and a good ear. You raise an eyebrow. He explains, in the older markets, those that moved like shadows, people once exchanged coded cookies. Not just for flavor, but for information. Secret meetings, hidden homes, even confessions. He picks one up. It bears a spiral and a single dot. Means wait 2 days, then turn left. You grin. That's surprisingly useful. He hands you another. A bird inside a circle. Safe house, especially if it smells of rosemary. You ask if this is all myth. He smirks, only the parts you can't taste. Here's your historical fact. In late medieval Europe, especially during periods of religious tension or plague-era suspicion, certain communities developed edible codes, baked goods, pressed with specific patterns often recognizable only to insiders. Some were spiritual, others practical. A swirl might indicate a safe path. A stamped fish meant speak no names. These were not mass-produced, but passed quietly through trusted vendors. You pick up a cake. It crumbles in your fingers, releasing a scent of clove and molasses. It's called forget-me-not, he says. You give it to someone you'll never see again. You pause, then eat it slowly. It's not sweet in the traditional sense, more like a spice poem with a hint of sadness. It stays on the tongue like a memory that refuses to fade. He offers you a box, inside a dozen more, each with different symbols, a bell, a boat, a crescent, a ladder. You ask if anyone still understands them. He shrugs. A few, but that's not the point. The cake remembers even if we don't. Here's your quirky detail. Some medieval cookie presses were carved from repurposed wax seals, the same used for letters and documents. That way, the messages baked into sweets could carry official weight, even if they were eaten before morning. Some travelers believed eating a seal cake gave them protection for the road. He hands you a final cake, blank again. But this one is darker. You bite in. It's dense with date paste and coriander, warm and strange. What's this one mean, you ask? He shrugs again, quieter now, that you've reached the end of the night. You smile. Your pouch is now practically singing with scent. Cookies, wafers, roasted nuts, whispers of thyme and quince and coated spice. You thank him, step back into the street, and for the first time all night you feel sated. Not just full, but understood. Behind you, the booth's light dims. Ahead, the city leans into its dreams. And in your pocket, crumbs that once meant something secret and maybe still do. The horizon, though still dark, has begun to loosen, just a thread, just a breath. You feel it before you see it, the faintest blush behind the rooftops, a kind of soft exhale from the east. And yet somehow your journey isn't over. Not until the city itself has told you its last, most delicate secret. And so your steps guide you toward the outer edge of the market, where the stones turn to dirt and the scent of candles fades into damp earth. A low hill rises ahead, crowned by what looks like a small, crumbling shelter. Smoke wisps from its roof, and in front of it sits an elderly man hunched over a stone slab, grinding something with a worn mortar. You almost turn back. He looks like he belongs to another kind of night. But then he speaks. Looking for memory, he asks, without lifting his head. You pause, maybe. He gestures to a bundle wrapped in waxed cloth, opens it. Inside, thin strips of what looks like fruit leather, but darker, almost black, with flecks of white powder. Preserved pear, he says, and thyme, dried in silence. You take one. It crackles, bends, then melts on your tongue like old wine and gentle bitterness. He nods. The monks used to eat it before writing their best lines. Here's your historical fact. In many monastic communities, especially Cistercian and Carthusian orders, monks preserved quiet foods, snacks that made no sound when chewed, smelled faintly or not at all, and could be eaten during long periods of meditation or scriptorium work. Dried pears, apple thins, and silent bread rolls were favored foods that didn't interrupt the discipline of stillness. The man pulls out another bundle, this one full of round, pale discs, soft and pillowy. You sniff one. It smells like steamed oats, fennel, and patience. Steam bread, he mutters. Made during fast days, light enough not to count, heavy enough to remember. You taste one. It's humble, yes, but deeply rooted, like it was baked by a forest. He continues without prompting. Shows you his collection of quiet snacks. Ghost cakes made from almond milk and rice, paste air-dried under linen. Candle loop circles of steamed bread meant to be eaten in one bite. Ink leaves, pressed herb crisps used as bookmarks during silent prayer. You ask if people still eat these. He smiles. No one eats silence anymore. They want crunch, drama, narration. You chuckle. He hands you a small strip of dried fig wrapped in spinach. Try not to chew, he says. You let it sit on your tongue. It unfolds like a secret garden at dusk. Here's your quirky detail. Some monks believed that the quieter the food, the more likely it was to carry spiritual insight. Recipes were often passed down with notes like "for contemplation only" or "do not serve on feast days." A few manuscripts describe snacks that could be eaten only when the bells did not ring. He stands now slowly and hands you a folded cloth. Inside 6 small items, each with a note. Breathe before eating. Do not swallow this too quickly. This one has no name. This is for someone else. Silence will explain. Take this home, but forget why. You feel like you've just been handed a riddle, a poem, and a grocery list at once. He places a hand on your shoulder, light brief. You don't always need noise to know you've been fed. You nod, not quite able to answer. As you walk away, you realize you're not just carrying food anymore. You're carrying the textures of silence, the flavors of restraint, the memory of 1,000 unspoken meals. The sun is just beginning to stretch, and you are almost full. The first blush of dawn is barely perceptible, but your footsteps have changed. They move slower now, as though weighted with softness, as though every crumb in your pouch, every scent on your coat, every whisper from the night has settled into you. The city hasn't quite woken, and neither have you. And yet there is one final curve in the road. Not a detour, a pilgrimage. You follow the sound first. It's not a bell, not a song, not even a fire crackling. It's a rhythm, like a heartbeat thumped into dough. Ahead, on a raised stone platform outside what looks like a city checkpoint, you see them, 2 women, one old, one younger, moving in near perfect sync. They're patting, folding, and frying what looks like small golden discs over a griddle built into a cart. The scent hits you, honey oil and childhood. You're not even close, but they spot you anyway. Pilgrim cakes, the younger one calls. You nod almost reverently. They motion you forward. We call them reminder pancakes. One flips gently in the pan. The old woman hums something, not a tune, just a vibration like memory with wings. They hand you a cake wrapped in paper made from mulberry bark. It's thin, blistered in spots, and smells like fried wheat, linden flour, and nostalgia. You bite. It is devotion made edible. Crisp edges, soft center, a hint of salt that disappears under honey like an apology. You close your eyes. You could cry. You don't. Here's your historical fact. In parts of medieval France, Iberia, and Central Europe, pancakes were not merely festive, they were ritual. Pilgrims often carried folded wheat cakes on long walks marked with tiny holes or herbs to denote the shrine or village they'd passed through. Some pancakes were used as edible passports, others as keepsakes for prayers. They were folded like letters, gifted like poems, and eaten only when the soul needed something more than food. The older woman shows you her iron molds, each one carved with symbols. This one's for mercy, she says, showing a spiral. This one's for safe travel, the younger adds, holding a cross between 2 dots. You ask how many they've made tonight. The old woman shrugs. More than hearts in the street. You smile. Do people ever come back for another? The younger one grins. Only the ones who understand it's not the same cake the second time. Here's your quirky detail. Some pilgrim pancakes were deliberately undercooked in the center to symbolize the journey still unfinished. Others were cooked until nearly burnt to honor the hardships already endured. Some traditions required the eater to fold the cake in 4 directions before taking a bite. North, south, east, west, claiming the road, the wind, the sky, and the earth. You ask if there's a meaning for the one they gave you. They shake their heads. This one, the elder says, means you made it. You sit by the cart chewing slowly. The griddle hisses, a candle flickers, a pigeon coos sleepily from a rooftop. The younger woman hands you a second pancake, smaller. It bears a pressed violet in the center. This one's for after, she says. You wrap it carefully and tuck it into your pouch where it rests against fig leather, silent bread, almond coins, and poems shaped like snacks. You realize you don't want the night to end, but it already has. You look east. Light is touching the sky like fingertips across silk. The elder rises, begins folding her cloths. The younger yawns, stacking pans. Before you leave, they each press a finger to your chest just over your heart. May your journey be folded, the older one whispers. And may your hunger always mean something, the younger adds. You walk away slowly. One last snack in your mouth. One last story on your tongue. The stones beneath you glow gently as if warmed by all the feet that have walked them before you. All the mouths that have tasted, chewed, and wondered. You don't know what waits past the gates, but you do know this. Sometimes a pancake is just breakfast, but sometimes it's a promise. The sky is no longer dark, but it hasn't quite brightened either. You stand at the threshold between night and morning breath, slow limbs loose, and every step you've taken tonight folded into your skin like parchment into a pocket. Your journey brings you to the very edge of the city, not a gate, not a wall, but a soft meadow brushed up against the last row of crooked homes. Fog curls low to the ground, hugging the earth like an old friend. The wind no longer whispers. It sighs. There's a single figure waiting for you. They're sitting on a wooden stool beside a kettle that steams gently over hot stones. In front of them, a table filled with things that aren't quite food and aren't quite not. You approach. The figure gestures for you to sit. No greeting, no explanation, just presence. The table is scattered with items from your long night. A dried fig pressed into cloth. A wafer shaped like a rose. A folded pancake slightly cracked. A string of almonds like prayer beads. A single violet flattened, still fragrant. You recognize them all, but they look different now. Ugh. Like souvenirs from a dream, the figure pours from the kettle into a wooden cup and hands it to you. You sip. The drink is warm, spiced, and strangely familiar, a blend of everything you've tasted, but gentler, quieter, as if the night itself has been steeped. You ask what it's made of. The figure smiles and finally speaks. Memory and a little boiled honey. They tell you softly that long ago there was a belief, one whispered between bakers and monks, among street vendors and sleepless travelers, that if you ate your way through the night, letting each snack become a story, a scent, a feeling, you'd wake up changed. Not in body, not in wealth, but in knowing. Knowing that even the smallest bite, a crumbled wafer, a roasted nut, a secret cake could hold a truth no library dared record. That food speaks if you chew slowly. That hunger isn't always for bread. Here's your final historical fact. In several medieval cultures, from the Iberian countryside to the edge of the Baltic Sea, people believed that eating a full circle of sacred or symbolic snacks during the night of a festival or a passage birth morning pilgrimage would bring you clarity or comfort. It was called the meal of memory. The figure looks you in the eyes, and now you've had yours. You smile. It's not relief, not pride, just peace. Here's your final quirky detail. In one forgotten town near the coast, it was said that if you fell asleep with crumbs on your chest, the gods would read them and write dreams just for you. That's why people wrapped pancakes in cloth and saved the last bite for bed. You take the last sip from the wooden cup. The figure rises, disappears into the fog. No goodbye, no name. Only the warmth of what they've left behind. You lie back in the grass. Crumbs fall from your pouch, tiny relics of roasted, dried, folded sweet. The fog curls tighter. Your body sinks, but your mind stays afloat, drifting on images of honeyed whispers and cakes with secrets. And now finally, it's time to sleep. Close your eyes. Let the soft hum of imaginary markets wrap around you. Let the warmth of roasted chestnuts, of monastic breads, and encoded cookies rest beneath your skin. Let your dreams be made of steam and silence. Let your hunger be satisfied. Let your journey be folded. Let your story rise like dough. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace. And now, the night has fully exhaled. You've wandered through alleys of steam and silence, tasted memories pressed into wafers, secrets folded into pancakes, and comfort roasted into almonds. You've sat beside monks, merchants, grandmothers, and ghosts. You've listened not just with your ears, but with your tongue, your breath, your heart. And somewhere along the way, your hunger changed. It softened. It grew wiser. You're not just full, you're held. So now rest. Let the stories settle like sugar at the bottom of a warm cup. Let the quiet rise around you like dough in a wooden bowl. Let your pillow feel like moss. Let the dark hold no fear. You are safe. You are full. You are home. And whether you wake to bells, birds, or the sound of the kettle calling you back, know this. There will always be stories waiting, and there will always be snacks. Good night, traveler. Sleep deeply. Dream gently. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.